No, I have not forgotten the favorite players playlist, and so here we go with my 15 favorite members of the Chicago Blackhawks. And it really wasn't that hard to come up with a list of 15. Again, and I always tell people whether I have or haven't liked a team historically. And I used to really like Chicago, and then I didn't. And over the last few years, I haven't disliked Chicago so much, but they've won enough, so they can go through their retool slash rebuild for now. But again, coming up with 15 players is not that hard when I've watched the sport for 40 years approximately. And anybody that didn't play while I was watching, I can't have as a favorite player because I didn't watch them. So there's no Stan Mikita, there's no Bobby Hull. I'm wearing this jersey because I don't wear it very often. And I have a bunch of Chicago jerseys, which you guys will see in the jersey collection slash jersey history video for Chicago when we get there. So, Chicago. Are we ready? Ready? All right. So 15 favorite players from Chicago, and I've got one young player on their team right now because I can't not have him on the list. Honorable mentions go to Daryl Sutter and Corey Crawford, who were the final cuts that I made on the list. Number 15. Bob Murray played over 1,000 games with the Chicago Blackhawks, and he was a very solid defenseman, and honestly, reliable, good player. And at the time where I came into watching the game, he was already a veteran, and yeah, over 1,000 games as a member of the Blackhawks. And yeah, again, good, solid two-way defenseman. At 14, Steve Sullivan, 5'8", played for the Hawks for a while. I remember Don Cherry being kind of mad that the Toronto Maple Leafs didn't keep Sullivan, and then he went to Chicago, and every time he scored a goal, it ended up on Coach's Corner. With here's what happened to that guy the Leafs let go, that Sullivan guy, he's pretty good. And I had to agree, Sullivan was pretty good. And his size worked against him when it came to getting to the NHL and probably in terms of keeping a job. And yet, he put up a ton of points when he got in the lineup. And I liked Sullivan a lot. So, fighting through being a smaller player will always make you one of my favorites in the game. Number 13. This guy would have been higher, but you know what? It's funny, too, because back in the early 90s, he was one of my favorite players in the league. Jeremy Roenick, very outspoken. Honestly, his early years in Chicago is why he's on the board. His later years in Chicago is why he'd be further down. Very outspoken, temperamental. Definitely a guy whose mouth's got him in trouble for decades. So when people look at what happened to him this year, they go, oh, what happened to Roenick? Same thing that's been happening to him his whole career. I still remember coming out of the lockout with him being asked, so this new salary cap, it really kind of screws the rookies, doesn't it? And his reaction to that kind of a question being, I made my money. And like, that's their problem, it's not mine. I'm a veteran, I'm making tons of money, so I just want to go out and play hockey. If they don't make their money, whatever, so be it. And that became something that I said with a friend of mine at work a lot after that. It was just, are you going home? Well, yeah, I'm going home. I don't care. I've made my money. You're not staying for overtime? No, I've made my money. Screw them. So that became kind of a thing where, oh, did you hear about that guy's contract? He didn't get very much money. Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. Roenick made his money, so screw that guy. So, yeah, that, again, the thing that makes you like him, which is his confidence and his talent, is also the thing that can make you go, yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that. Number 12. Always entertaining, though. Jeremy Roenick's always entertaining. Sometimes for all the wrong reasons. Number 12. Newfoundland's own Keith Brown. If you're watching a CBC game, you would be reminded regularly that Keith Brown was from Newfoundland, and rightfully so. And played a good long time with Chicago. Very good defenseman, and enjoyed him immensely as a member of the Hawks. And this was at a time when I liked Chicago quite a bit. I would cheer for them in the playoffs. When it came to Norris Division teams, if Minnesota wasn't in the mix, if Minnesota couldn't win, Chicago was the team that I wanted to see win. They were my go-to team if Minnesota wasn't available. Sometimes they weren't. So I have Keith Brown at number 12. At number 11, if you put Jocelyn Thibault on any of the Stanley Cup winning teams, they still win the Stanley Cup. Jocelyn Thibault was a very good goaltender. Often remembered as that guy who got traded for Patrick Roy. Whoops. He's going to end up in my THG Hall of Fame. Don't be surprised when it happens. If it hasn't happened already, I don't think I've done a Thibault video. I'm pretty sure I haven't. But Jocelyn Thibault was an excellent goaltender behind some pretty bad Chicago teams. And then injuries creep in there as well, and it's too bad because Jocelyn Thibault was excellent in his prime. Very, very good goaltender. Again, he's not Patrick Roy. He was never going to be Patrick Roy, but he ends up on the board. Now, I don't have Tony Esposito on the board because at the time I came into watching hockey, I'm going to say that before I get into the top 10, Tony Esposito was in his decline, shall we say. So once playoffs rolled around, Esposito wasn't really the guy, and Murray Bannerman was more of the guy. So I was more of a Murray Bannerman fan than I was a Tony Esposito fan at that stage, although I loved Tony's mask. Tony Esposito's mask was fantastic. I also do not have Ed Belfour on the board. Ed Belfour was not one of my favorite people when he played in the league. And that's just, again, this is why, it's a list of favorites, not list of the all-time greats. So I'm just throwing that out there, even though people just skip to the end and go, where's Esposito? Where's Bobby Hull? Like, I'm that old. All right, number 10. Proving I'm old, but I'm not that old, is Al Secord. Unless you don't know who Al Secord is, in which case I am that old for you. Al Secord was a 50-goal scorer at his peak goal scoring, but he was a little bit of everything. He was a power forward, and he was a tough player. And he was kind of the epitome of a Blackhawk. So if you're going to have a Chicago Blackhawk player that you say, you know what, just sort of looks like one. There's one that looks more like a Blackhawk on this board than Al Secord. But Secord without the helmet and everything, yeah, kind of fantastic to watch out there. And yeah, so Secord I have at number 10. Number 9, underrated forward. Troy Murray, who I believe is not related at all to Bob Murray. Pretty sure they are not actually related. Troy Murray had a season of 99 points. And I remember thinking, he didn't hit 100. He's never going to get anywhere near 99 again. And then he didn't. And that was too bad because, and the thing is that was that one explosive season for Troy Murray, but he was a very good two-way forward. He was a guy who could be relied on for points, and he could play kind of a little bit of everything on the ice. So Troy Murray was a guy I liked. The 99-point season was definitely a season with an asterisk, and this is an outlier. Don't expect this going forward. But yeah, I like Troy Murray. So yeah, Murray gets checked off. At number 8, yeah, I'll put this guy at 8. I can't have him higher. I want to, though. And he's not having a great year. At least at the pause, he wasn't having a great year overall. Alex DeBrincat. I get asked in live streams, do you think DeBrincat will score 50? And my answer is yes. It's still yes, even though he had a down year this year. Last year, he was fantastic. Alex DeBrincat, before he was drafted, I was very high on the guy, and I was like, I really hope he gets picked in the first round. And then he went to Chicago, and I'm like, are you serious? Chicago gets DeBrincat. Are you serious? Because, again, second round, and a team that, was already in the midst of starting their retool that they've been going through, and they pick up this fantastic second round steal in DeBrincat. And so far, I think he's still been that. Even though this year he is not the goal scorer he was last year, I still think the goal scoring is there, and I still believe in it. So DeBrincat, for me, ends up at number 8. But I would understand if you don't agree with me. Number 7. Yeah, I'll put him at 7. The one that looks the most like a Chicago Blackhawk. Who looks like a Chicago Blackhawk? Dirk Graham. And maybe at some point I'll do like the face of each franchise, and Dirk Graham would, and then people would get mad. They'd be like, it's just Patrick Kane. What's this guy talking about? Nah, that's not what that means. Just, you look and go, yeah, that jersey suits that guy. That's right. Put Patrick Kane in any jersey, it'll work. Probably not Canucks. But Dirk Graham, yeah, he was a captain. He was a great player. He could score more than he got credit for. He also had a Selke trophy mixed in there. Really, really solid defensively at a time where there wasn't necessarily a lot of defensive forward play going on outside of a select few, and he would have been one of the select few. So Dirk Graham was a guy I respected quite a bit. I really liked him. I wanted his coaching career to last longer, but, these things happen. So yeah, Dirk Graham comes off the board at 7. So at 6, and we're really getting down to it now. I'll have it 6. And of course I have a beautiful jersey from this guy. Absolutely gorgeous. And I'm not wearing the Marian Hossa. And for people who are wondering, the Marian Hossa did not come into the collection. I got a Marian Hossa jersey from Lids, which had a hole in it. And so I sent it back to them, and they gave me a refund, and they apologized. And then I looked on their website, and they still were listing a Marian Hossa jersey. And I went, oh, you're kidding me. So I ordered it a second time. And this time, and there's a video on the channel of it. I may even link it at the end of this video because it's hilarious. We went to the States where it had been mailed to, and because it was the American lid, so it wouldn't mail to Canada. So it goes to the American Post Office. And I ordered the Hossa thinking they wouldn't sell me the same jersey twice with a hole in it. And they did. It's the exact same jersey. And eventually they gave me a credit. I used it to get a yellow a yellow Nashville Predators jersey, their current jersey in yellow. So I didn't pay full price for that one either. And yeah, the Hossa jersey with a hole in it, it's still here. Because I told them, I said, I'm not sending it back to you again because you're going to sell it again. And they fell all over themselves apologizing to me. And it was great. And it was before Lids got bought by Fanatics. So you can't say, well, that's how Fanatics works. It was before Lids got bought by Fanatics. But it did show that the supply chain that as it worked with Lids probably was part of the problem with the company. Not only that, but the fact that it was really easy for me to build up points and get free stuff. So I kept just building up points and get free stuff. And I was like, they're probably not making a profit on this. And then they sold to Fanatics, telling me they probably weren't making a product or making a profit off of their product. But yeah, that's what I think of when I see Marian Hossa and Chicago Blackhawks, is that jersey I have with the hole in it. It's fantastic. And I've thought about replacing it with one that doesn't have a hole in it, but why? Because then, then what? We're going to just throw out the one with a hole in it, and then that conversation starter's gone? And I've thought about wearing it to a meetup, because what better way to keep cool than have a jersey with a vent in the back? All right, moving along to number 5. Number 5. This is where the favorites versus greats takes shape. If this was greatest Chicago Blackhawks that I've ever watched, Patrick Kane is easily number 1. He can take over a game. He's exciting to watch on almost every shift. He's got 3 Stanley Cup rings. And 2015 was the year I really, truly gained respect for him, and the reason he's in the top 15. He would not have been in the top 15 if I had done this video in 2014 or 2013. He wouldn't have been anywhere near it. But Patrick Kane has gained a lot of respect for me over the years. He's done some questionable things. Usually it's an off-the-ice thing that people will talk about with him. But, while there are a number of things that may bother some, I'm only looking at just the general persona and the player on the ice, and so I have him at 5. I can't have him at 1, but I have him at 5. Number 4. And again, these are my favorites. So Jonathan Toews comes in at 4. Jonathan Toews I have above Kane. And it's funny because every now and then people will be like, Shannon really can't stand Jonathan Toews. I like Jonathan Toews. I like the captain serious bit. I like the player. I think he's a great competitor. I think he does, everything that you want your leader to do. I think that even when he's not scoring points in games, I think he's still a useful player. Is he a little bit past his prime right now? Yeah, probably, but not that much. And in all honesty, he still has stretches of games. It can be a stretch as long as a month, and where he looks fantastic. So yeah, Toews and Kane are guys that, I've had my times where I didn't like, or I have, but at this point I have a lot of respect for both players. And I don't rule out the Chicago Blackhawks. And the reason that I still find myself kind of scared of the Blackhawks is Kane and Taves. Now this is where people are going to say, well, where's Duncan Keith? Duncan Keith is not in my top 15 because again, it's favorite players, right? And so this will kind of indicate which era my favorite players come from. Let me just fix that 3. I'll fix this. Just discuss amongst yourselves while I'm fixing stuff. Doug Wilson. I don't understand why Doug Wilson isn't in the Hall of Fame. I really don't. Other than the fact that during the time period he was in the league, he was in the league at the same time as Ray Bork, as Paul Coffey, as Brian Leach towards the end there. Like he was in the league with some really, really great defensemen. So he didn't win the Norris Trophy as he would have in other eras. But I still think he was one of the best puck-moving defensemen. I think he was one of the best all-around defensemen in the National Hockey League. I don't think he was defensively suspect for the era. And I'm to this day kind of surprised he's not in the Hall of Fame because I think he belongs there. And he was one of my favorite members of the Hawks. I'm even surprised when I look up hockey cards and I see the value of a Doug Wilson rookie card. They're not that expensive. And I'm like, man, that's good value for a guy who should be in the Hall of Fame. You've got to think if he gets into the Hall of Fame, that's going to drive the price of his rookie card up. But yeah, Doug Wilson, very underrated in my eyes. Very, very good player. Number 2. Denny Savard. One of the most creative offensive players in his prime of any. And he fell to Chicago because the Canadians decided they wanted Doug Wickenheiser for some inexplicable reason. And so Denny Savard, French-born player, should have been a Hab, wasn't. Chicago says thanks. And Denny Savard put up some amazing point totals for the Chicago Blackhawks. Really, really solid player. The only thing missing for his time with the Chicago Blackhawks was a cup ring. So, Denny Savard, one of the all-time greats, just so creative with the puck. During a time where there were a lot of very creative players and very good offensive players, Denny Savard stood out. He stood out amongst that group. So, yeah, nothing bad to say about Denny Savard. Which leaves me with number 1. Now, I'm not going to try to argue Steve Larmour should be in the Hall of Fame. But Larmour had an amazing Ironman streak. And it's not like Larmour played a no-hit style of game. It's not like Larmour was a coward. And that was I remember when Doug Jarvis passed Gary Unger and Don Cherry lost his mind with that one, where he said, Gary Unger played a tough game and Doug Jarvis doesn't hit anything and he's a weak, like he just made this whole argument about how terrible Doug Jarvis was and how his Ironman streak shouldn't count because of the game he played. Steve Larmour had quite the Ironman streak himself, and I would think he was a guy who played more of a Don Cherry style of hockey. Now, not that he was like a tremendous power forward or anything. The other part with Larmour that gets forgotten is he was pretty good offensively too. He wasn't a slouch when it came to the offensive side of the puck. Just when you're playing with Denny Savard, you're going to be overshadowed. So probably not as creatively gifted as Savard, but still a very good offensive forward. And if I had to say who my favorite Blackhawk was of all time, I would say Steve Larmour. Which, again, may surprise some people that watch this. But there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And remember, this means favorites, not best. This means my favorites, not the best players who've played for the team. Because obviously you'd have Duncan Keith ahead of Bob Murray. But for me, for favorites, I would have Bob Murray ahead of Duncan Keith. But again, let me know your thoughts. And I haven't forgot Brent Seabrook either. He doesn't get in the top 15 either. But again, this is my favorites. It's not meant to be scientific. Thanks again for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.